Jordan, I know what I want for my holiday gift this year.
Oh, do tell.
I will put up some KPIs against this. I'm not asking you to just give it to me. We'll set some targets. I want a theme song. I want a brand champions theme song.
Oh, you got any inspo? Like, what are you thinking?
Oh, I got inspo.
I
got inspo. First of all, full credit. Let me just butter you up a little bit. Your holiday gift this year was the single greatest holiday gift I've ever gotten in my life. Roger Moore as James Bond karate kicking the bad guy in the face in The Spy Who Loved Me. Dude, greatest gift ever. First of all, you listened closely, not just James Bond. Do you know who my favorite James Bond is ever? Side note, everybody is entitled to their opinion. If you think anybody other than Roger Moore is the greatest James Bond of all time, you're wrong. James Bond is it, period. I learned at least 74% of what it means to be a man from Roger Moore.
And wait, who's the greatest bad guy in a James Bond movie?
Ooh, you tell me.
Jaws.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were going to go, remember the dude who had the hat and you take the hat and you throw it and it had a knife around the hat and you could cut somebody's head off with it?
Oh, of course. Are you kidding me? He sawed off the that statue when they were at the golf course. What was his name? If anybody remembers the name, like type it in the comments. It's escaping me.
Dude, okay. So we're 100% aligned. By the way, we've been working for 26 years together. This is the first moment we've actually ever been completely aligned. So let me just expand. Greatest gift ever. You didn't buy it, you took it, you constructed it, you blew it up big. I love it. Greatest gift ever. I think a few years ago, I got you Derek Jeter cologne. Do you remember that?
Of course. Are you kidding me?
Arguably the worst gift ever. I hope it was tongue in cheek. I can't even remember. So we're now even. Next up, dude, we have to have our own theme song. I've teed up a few.
Okay.
I know you think this is totally fucking irrelevant. This is the dumbest idea ever. I know you think it doesn't mean anything. I'm going to play the first one. I'm teeing up on purpose to reinforce your point, because this is one of the hottest podcasts in the world. Smart Liz, Jason Bateman, etc. Crushing it. Terrible, terrible song.
Smart.
All right. So I'm going to just rate that one. Complete and total piece of shit. And this is the biggest podcast in the world. Your wife and my wife would both much rather hang out and listen to the Smartless podcast than hang out with either of us. I get in the car with my wife and she literally just puts it right on. Like, no talking. That's it. And the song sucks. But hold on. Let's amp this up just a little bit. Can we play the theme song? This one I think is fucking genius. Dax Shepard, armchair expert. I don't think I'm the target audience. I don't love the show. I think he's doing a great job. It's just, I don't think it's targeting me. But this goddamn theme song is genius. Play this one.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
Dude, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I want. Backup singers, full band, original lyrics. That's pretty good, right?
It's not bad. It sounds so like cheesy. Like there's like singing the name of the podcast. Like,
yeah,
it's okay, fine. Yeah.
Beats the shit out of the thing that we've licensed and only use 4 seconds of.
True.
Right.
But if you think that this might make or break the podcast, so I'm down.
Dude, the podcast is already broken. We can only make. We can't break.
I think our moms are the only ones listening.
Totally. All right, here we go. This one's for you. Can we play the All In podcast? They did not actually license. They did not have this custom made. I'm pretty sure they licensed this based upon a real song. But this is legit. This is right up your alley.
We'll let your winners ride.
Rain Man David Sack.
You know what I do when I hear this? I go immediately to like the outline and I skip it, as I do every podcast.
No,
but because you're my second wife, and I'm here to make you happy, first wife,
dude. We started doing this before you got married, dude. Christine can get in line.
If this is what you want, honey, like sure. If it makes you happy, it's going to make me happy.
Yes, my happiness is your happiness. By the way, how are you listening to podcasts?
YouTube, which is the number one way people.
No, I get it. In what environment? Are you like exercising and shit, right?
Yeah, exercising. I don't know, on a meeting with you.
There it is. God bless the honesty. All right, last one. Like, we're pretty similar here, right? Two morons wearing the same exact shirt, went to school together, the whole 9 yards. But there is one fundamental difference between us, one that will show your intellectual superiority. Because the very favorite thing I have in my entire life, there's nothing I would rather do, is sit. Sorry, Jenna, my wife. Number 2 after hanging out with my wife and kids and my dog is hang out and listen to DiPietro and Rothenberg, AM radio, sports radio in New York. My favorite thing in the world. And it is literally the last thing you would ever consider doing with your time, right? This is just like it turns your brain to tapioca pudding immediately. And I love it. Can we roll this theme song? This one's legit. You got to get down to the lyrics. This dude is the number 1 draft pick in the NHL.
Got the number 1 pick in the NHL draft, but the men that can't seem to stump.
Yeah.
Do something dumb, that's an observation. CLT make them need to run.
Yep. The writer, producer, songwriter, I found him. He's on SoundCloud. That's my Christmas gift.
But wait a minute. Like, so, NFL fans, NFL players, right? Sounds like music that fans would listen to, players might listen to. It's awesome. What do marketers listen to? Like, how do we make this relevant?
You already said you don't listen to anything. You skip the whole thing. So if you're representative of a marketer, this has nothing to do with our audience, which consists of you and me anyway.
Great. I love it. Dude, you've got instruments behind you somewhere in that room. Why don't you make us a song?
I will do it. I will sing. I will play the bass.
Dude, you and your son. That's the idea. Let's have
Super
Tyler
dope with
create-
my son. He's not wasting his time with our moronic
Dude,
podcast.
we'll pay him. We'll pay him.
Ooh.
Come on.
This was a long-winded, very public pitch for you to pay my son a few bucks to write a song.
100%. I'm down.
That was my whole strategy. You stepped right into it.
I am down. Yes. Tyler, if you're listening, I know he's somewhere. He's probably at school right now, but yes, I'm not kidding.
Try to act like he doesn't know us. That's what he's doing. All right, Jake, roll our theme song. Let's roll our 4 seconds of credit. And then let's get into the podcast.
3, 2, 1, go!
All right, dude. So I have gone through the painstaking process of actually listening to these podcasts. And if you want to find a miserable way to spend your time, listen to yourself talking on a new podcast. This is not fun. I sucked up the pain for us, and I listened to Morgan, by the way, unbelievable team member. First piece of advice, if anybody in this world can go find somebody like Morgan for their team, greatest thing ever. She came to us. She's still an intern in college. I think we believed in her more than she believed in herself. She has risen through the ranks. She's now a senior member of our leadership team, and she doesn't bullshit us. And one of the big points she made is like, guys, you've never even taken a moment to introduce yourselves. Like, nobody even knows who the hell you are. So I think there's 2 things I realized that we need to do, which is 1, listen to Morgan's advice. Let's take a moment and introduce ourselves, which sucks because I don't think we like talking about ourselves at all. What we want to do is pass along some knowledge we've learned. And then the second thing is, after listening to all these shows, I think we've done the proverbial Seinfeld yada, yada, yada over the sex. Meaning we keep talking about mid-funnel, we keep talking about the journey, we keep talking about brand to demand, but we're a little bit at 60,000 feet. And I think what we need to do is make it super tangible. Oh, by the way, third thing I've realized, I talk too much, and your content is much, much better than mine. So starting next episode, I'm going to shut the hell up and let you do all the talking. But I'm going to answer this question of who the hell we are, because typically when we go out and we introduce ourselves and they need the brains of the outfit to talk strategy, you do that part and I do the introduction. So act like you've never listened to this, act like you've never heard this shit before, or just take a nap for the next 3 minutes. And then I'm going to pass the mic over to you. Because to answer the question that literally millions of people around the podcast sphere are looking for, who the hell are we? So, where do we begin? I think the best way to begin is we were college roommates, and 2, of the absolute worst college students in the entire world, right? And I've made this point previously. Like, if you're looking for a podcast from a couple of Harvard professors or Harvard graduates, like, this ain't it. These are a couple guys that learned it from the mean streets of marketing. So we barely graduated college, literally, that's not an exaggeration. And we found ourselves in the exact right place at the exact right time, which was San Francisco at the edge of Silicon Valley in the 90s, right when the internet hit. And I'll start with myself. I found myself right place, right time, had to beg my way into a job run by a bunch of Harvard Business School graduates who were running strategy and research. These guys at one point, when the internet first hit, were like, hey, Jeff, as an intern where I started, go get us online. And they gave me all the floppy disks or AOL and CompUSA and whatnot. I literally didn't have the attention span to figure it out. Hal came over. He's finally like, dude, this is how you actually use a computer. But once we got online, I could instantaneously see the future, right? And I started learning how to program in HTML and all that stuff and writing surveys. And a big part of my job was collecting data, right? We were working for some of the most successful brands in the world, and these brands wanted to understand what do their target audiences think. So we would do qualitative research, we would do quantitative research. It would often take 6 months, and my job was to collect that data and then compare that to overall budgets. The more data you collect, the more money it costs. And what I quickly realized is that we could take all of our traditional techniques, focus groups, mall surveys, mail surveys, et cetera, and port it online. And quickly, we were able to figure out how to take a process that used to take 6 months and truncate it down to 6 weeks. Then we could take it from 6 weeks down to 6 days. But the bigger issue is this, not just the collecting of the data. All of these brands actually had the same exact question, which is, what does the audience actually want? Now that everybody has a supercomputer right at their fingertips and power has shifted from brands to consumers and they're no longer sitting there complacently watching TV ads, what do they really want? So since I was one of the very first people outside of the military and outside of universities to figure out how to apply this technology, I'm still a young zit-faced kid and I've got Microsoft, Netscape, Sun Microsystems, Walt Disney, all as my clients, answering this question of, what do people really want from brands? How are great brands actually built? The flip side of it is, I don't know if you even remember this. Do you remember this day? We're in college one day, and we've never talked about this in 30 years, Jordan, and you had a sketchbook. Do you remember this? It was sophomore year. You have a sketchbook. I'm like, hey, man, what are you doing? You're like, oh, I'm just sketching. And then you showed me it. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I think it was actually junior year. It was in my in my room upstairs, I think at North Willard, and I had this thing. That's the way I recall it. But anyway, I do remember you looking at it intently.
It's really weird, dude. I mean, our relationship, I remember the shirt you were wearing the very first time we met, like really some weird stuff going on there. But I remember looking at this notebook and I'm like, dude, that's insane. That is incredible. Like, that is totally normal. And I still remember to this day, the look on your face. You were looking at me like, what are you talking about? Like, dude, this is easy. Anybody could do this. I'm like, no, man, this is an incredibly unique skill set that you have, that you can sketch things that were absolutely beautiful and gorgeous and photorealistic and shaded properly and all these things that I could never imagine, right? So then fast forward half a dozen years later, and you've got these art gallery openings, right? And now you've got celebrities buying your paintings. I remember like opening a People magazine. There's like Johnny Depp in his living room. And then there's one of your paintings sitting over his fireplace. By the way, I've got one of the only few right on my wall right over here. And you're incredibly successful. But you realize like there's a lot of luck in that industry, right? You can sit there smoking cigarettes till you're blue in the face at a gallery, hoping to God that you're one of the very few chosen ones. You started applying your artistic skills to commercial purposes. And one day you sent me a link to a website. And what the company at which you worked had figured out is how to create broadband connectivity before anybody else actually had broadband. So when you're talking about the old days of like yahoo.com, look like gray and text, the next thing you know, you've got all this incredible functionality. And you sent me a link to a planet that was
It's a
spinning
website.
on its axis.
Yeah.
It was like back then, it was literally the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I'm like, holy shit, how did you figure this out? You're like, so we're going on and on. I'm like, well, how do I use it? How do you get information? You're like, just run your mouse over a crater and you get different information. Here's about us. Here's our services. And I'm like,
Yeah, it
dude,
seems
that's
so
the
obvious.
coolest thing. What's that?
Seems so obvious, right? To me, at least. Designer meets researcher. Researcher, you're out of your mind.
So I'm like, dude, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. But like, I'm not so sure that's how people want to access information with this interplanetary usability construct, right? So you're like, all right, tough guy, show me what you're working on. So I show you some of the data, I show you some of the research, and I'll never forget, you looked at me, you're like, dude, that's the most boring shit I've ever seen in my life. And that was the moment. I was like, wait a second. What if we take my boring shit and your cool shit and blend them together, right? And the idea was, how do we marry together data and analytics with creativity? And you fast forward now, 25 years later, and no marketing department, no brand, no agency is even close to considering any form of marketing without marrying data with creativity. But we're two young dudes. We had never even stepped foot in an advertising agency, right? We went over to your place. We couldn't afford 2 chairs, so there's 2 desks and 1 chair. Whoever's got the great idea gets the chair. I spent my entire time sitting on the floor. We'll tell the story about you kicking me out of the creative department and the strategy department at some other time. But quickly, we went from no Rolodex, no contacts, no anything, to grabbing ESPN as a client. Once we got ESPN, we grabbed Disney, and then we had Apple, Amazon, Starbucks. We went on to create a documentary about the future of advertising called The Naked Brand. It was all about the fact that people don't want to sit around complacently watching 30-second spots. We thought everyone was going to want to boo us off the stage. We had a standing ovation. We won a bunch of awards, went around the world, wrote Friction, wrote Exponential. They both became bestsellers. I'll try to pick off the list here. I'm going to mess it up. We've had all the major sports leagues, the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, Wyndham and Marriott and Suzuki, Amazon, Discover, Capital One, Universal. The list goes on and on and on. So I think what the world is now woken up to is this concept of not simply marrying data and creativity, but marrying data and creativity for a specific reason. And that specific reason is to use that unprecedented level of data creativity to actually bring value to the audience. Create content that has real meaning, that empowers them, that inspires, that educates, that informs them, and they just put it in the right place at the right time, meaning follow their journey, understand their unmet needs, and then satisfy it with emotional and functional content. So I hope we never need to do this again. I find it incredibly embarrassing. I hope Morgan is finally happy with us at this point, which is, that's the introduction of us. That's who we are. Can we get into the good shit now?
Bring it.
All right. There's a gaping hole that I mentioned. We keep talking about the mid-funnel. We keep talking about the journey. And I think we need to make it as tangible as possible. So when we talk about mid-funnel marketing, which is not the only type of marketing out there, it's not the only thing that we do, but let's get a little bit of clarity here. When we talk about mid-funnel marketing, what are we really talking about?
We live in a mid-funnel world. I don't care whether you believe that, you want to accept that. It's the truth. You wake up in the morning, you pick up your phone. You don't wake up in the morning and turn the TV on. Pick up your phone, and where do you go? You're on Instagram. You're on Facebook. You're on your email. You're on your texts. Every single channel I just mentioned, we know something about you, right? That is literally the definition, right, of the mid-funnel, right? Because the upper funnel was like, well, I don't know anything about them, so I'm just going to blast them with the one RTB over and over and over again, right? And now you've got what? Half of the population who has unplugged from TV, right? Soon to be the majority. We live in a mid-funnel world. The mid-funnel is incredibly important. Why is it important? Because we're just asking upper funnel to do too much, right? You create a TV spot, maybe you've got 1 or 2 versions. So you've got 1 or 2 reasons to believe in there. That's it. Right? You're done. And then you're asking somebody to buy at the end. The mid-funnel is the place where you really can articulate to an audience why and how and where to use their product. And we talk about the journey. The journey isn't just, hey, I saw your TV spot, now I'm ready to buy. Some journeys take weeks, months, some take days. Regardless, how do I give people the right content at the right time? Think about everything from, educational content, right? On what does it mean to use the product, or what does it mean to use a particular product, not even a product. Think about like the travel industry. What does it mean to travel to this destination, to experience this town or region, right? And then the hotel sits within it. You think about inspirational content, which might be right below your upper funnel, right? What is inspirational, right, about this destination? How do I romanticize it to get somebody to go? We talked about even electric vehicles, right? On the other podcast, my wife wants to buy an electric vehicle because it's going to save the planet. I'm just interested on, how much money I'm going to save. Those are two different things. You just can't do it all with one single campaign that runs a few months out of the year. And that's where the mid funnel comes in. The mid funnel is your place to provide real value as somebody makes their way down this journey, which could take weeks, and you're able to describe in detail what this product does for you, where it lives, why it's good for you, how it's going to work. I think that's the real power. And you think about and we're not just talking about small little content. I think you can atomize content and you can serve it in different places, but I think you could also create big campaigns that you can't do on TV. I remember we did a campaign for Days In, right? One of my favorite campaigns. They had this whole sports audience. It was like moms and dads who have to travel for sports leagues, right? These travel sports. I don't know if you did it. I did it. And you're traveling to, an hour to 2 hours outside of where you live. It's usually in the middle of Podunk, and there's not too many hotel options. There's no Marriott. How's that? So, but there are tons of economy hotels. And the farther you get outside of the city, the better they are. So anyway, Days In's like, we want to hit those people. I said, okay, we have an idea. I remember this. This took us 2 years to sell it. Do you remember this? We had the idea. They loved it. And then they're like, no, not yet. So here's the idea. We're going to sponsor and create our own travel baseball team. Because remember, travel sports is not cheap. It's expensive. And a lot of people get blocked out, right? They just can't afford it. So we're like, well, hell, let's create our own travel sports team. Let's have tryouts, right? Let's film it. Let's play an entire season of games. Let's film it. Let's see if we can't go and win something. Like maybe there's some sort of regional championship. I don't know. Maybe we can compete, film it, and we'll do the whole thing and atomize it out, and we'll serve it in their social channels, put paid media behind it, etc. They thought we were crazy. And then finally we got a CMO who's like, this is fantastic. And they funded it, and we did the whole thing. It took us, I think, 3 months, right? Because it was a full baseball season, and we filmed the whole thing. We found these kids, we found the coach, and we created something in the mid-funnel. You couldn't run this on TV, that literally touched the hearts of, I think, parents everywhere. It was great content for the whole family, because you really got to see these kids go from tryouts, getting on the team, going through the season. And do you remember they actually they made it to the regional finals in it was Scottsdale, Arizona. And we didn't anticipate anybody going anywhere. And next thing you know, I remember Wyndham was like, we got to go. Like, we need to film this. And we took a team, we went down, and the ending of this whole content series was them coming in second place, right, in this regional finals in Arizona. That's just something that you just can't do anywhere but the mid-funnel. And it targeted a certain audience, right, with a specific need. And it was something that I think just elevated the brand to another level and endeared themselves to an audience that they never would have reached in a way that was nobody thought was possible. That's what I think the mid-funnel can do for you.
Yeah, so let's unpack that. Great summary. So in a lot of ways, the way I hear it and the way you're describing it is digital and mid-funnel are almost synonymous, right? It's important to understand the difference as well as the overlap in here. But to your point, we start every day in a digital world, right? We're up on social, we're up on CRM, we're up on websites and email and all that good stuff. And I think if I'm unpacking and understanding what you're saying is something sits below that 30-second spot, which does a pretty good job of reaching millions of people and getting a company's name out there. But what do you stand for? What do you believe in? What makes your products different and better? The best way to communicate that is in a digital world, right? That's the way the audience sees it, the content they consume. And ultimately what that's doing is moving those brand metrics. And eventually you have some sort of technique that says, open this or click here and buy now. And that's sort of lower funnel. And between that and TV, that's like maybe 1% of the journey, but most of it happens in the mid funnel. And there's a subtlety to what you're describing, right? What we did for baseball for days, we built that team. The old days, you would sponsor a team. And then in the 30-second spot, be like, sponsored by whatever. And the crazy data point that's out there right now, which I'm so glad it's out there because I think every single marketer knows this in their heart, is 85% of those TV ads are either completely ignored or just simply aren't remembered. That's almost 9 out of 10. But it's more than that because in your example, we didn't have to sponsor. We could build that team. So we found a bunch of kids who were worthy, but didn't have the resources to create a team. We found a 4-time championship coach. We designed their uniforms. We trained them. We built a content series to track them. They sucked at baseball. The ball was going between their legs. They stood no chance. And then all of a sudden, like if we scripted this, nobody would believe the script. All of a sudden, they learned how to play baseball. And to your point, they went to the championship game. They didn't win, but like that's almost better because it was so authentic. Millions of people are watching it. Days in, the sponsor of this whole investment, it's all over their social channels. They go along for the ride. It's clear what Days In believes in, which is travel sports and helping kids and the brightness of your day and getting it out there. In that campaign, if we can even call it a campaign, drove a return on investment measured as ROAS as ballpark 3 to 4 times what normally happens when you're using traditional techniques of let me hit you 6, 7, 8 times in a row with a TV ad and then get you a bunch of banner ads in the lower funnel.
100%. And even think about the audience we're trying to reach. Travel moms and dads. Like you could try to do that on TV, but think about how much waste, right? Like it's really hard. In digital, we can target exactly who they are with this campaign. I also remember that there were other competitive hotel brands that were looking to change the brand. And they literally went and called up Wyndham and said, I saw this campaign. I'm interested in becoming a Days In.
That's crazy. So you're reaching a B2C audience and then you're getting the tangential B2B audience tied in there.
Yep.
That's one of the things that I wanted to try to unpack a little bit because I think when you listen to the concept of mid-funnel, and I think when you listen to the concept of really the world being pretty social first, right? That's such a powerful component of the mid-funnel world. It almost feels like you're relegated to doing short, snackable, affordable pieces of content. But I think what I'm hearing from you, and help me understand this, is when you go into that realm of digital first, social first, mid-funnel first, it doesn't limit you to small, cheap, snackable content, but you can come up with huge ideas like building a baseball team and helping these kids travel and compete.
100%. I think it goes hand in hand with the smaller stackable content, which is much easily optimized, right? And can be more of a laboring ore that surrounds this bigger tentpole content.
Okay, which I think probably makes for a nice segue, right? Which is always on is a huge component of building a great brand today. And we bring it up quite a bit, the need for always on. But talk to me about what that means and why it's so important.
Yeah, here's why the always on brand is critical today, right? We say internally, campaigns are a luxury. The always on brand is a necessity. There's a couple reasons for that. One is campaigns are awesome, right? Big campaigns, big temples, but the problem is they're one and done for the most part. So you have an inability to test and learn with a campaign. You do testing before the campaign, right? Message testing, whatever. But really you're not optimizing the campaign. It's up and it's done. You spend your budget. But with always on, you literally can have content and ads and messaging in market, right? On a cadence, call it like an 8 to 12 week cadence, and you're getting direct feedback on what's working, what's not. And then you're able to iterate and test and learn, right? Huge benefit. Number 2, Meta, Instagram and Facebook, they're prioritizing new creative being put in market all the time. Why, right? It's actually obvious. They want to make sure the experience for the user is as fresh and new as possible. If the user's going to see the same ad over and over again, what does that say about the overall experience on Instagram or Facebook, right? Not great. The algorithm basically has been programmed to prioritize this new creative, which is why every time you launch new creative into market in those channels, you see a boost in performance every single time. So you want to run the same piece of ad creative, and then all of a sudden you watch your KPI, your cost per acquisition, starts to go down over time. And then you launch new creative and boom, shoots right back up. And then it starts to decay again. That's why, like with many of our clients, we are launching new creative every 8 to 12 weeks. And these aren't huge lifts, but they do take effort. But the benefit outweighs the cost because you're seeing that jump in performance. So you're increasing revenue, profit, all that sort of stuff. And we see that whether it's in hospitality, whether it's finance, or whether it's in retail. So I think that's another real reason why the always on brand is so important.
That's fascinating because if you look at it through the definition of marketing, we talk about it being sticky. And if you talk about it through the lens of consumers, we talk about these platforms being hopelessly addictive. And the truth is, it's a really smart move by all those social platforms to always keep things feeling fresh. So ultimately, you always have to be generating fresh content or it's going to ruin their brand. Facebook will fall apart, Meta will fall apart, TikTok will fall apart if they don't have fresh content. And you see it in the data. Once a piece of content is put out there 4 times, the engagement levels drop 45% almost instantly. If you try to take the old model of one single unit and repeat it over and over again, it means your effectiveness literally drops in half. So now 85% of TV ads are basically not working. And then you come over to social, and if you use that same technique, that's not working either. So your point with always on is you always have to have fresh content. And the brands that have fresh content drive that engagement. Engagement leads to interest, and interest leads to conversions. Help me with this one, because I think for you, you spend so much time in this world, it's second nature. But can you define what always on really means?
Yeah, it means setting up at regular intervals, right? Releases into a particular channel with new content or new ads. So you could have the same strategy, right, for a product. So you've got your RTBs, right, your core messaging, all this sort of stuff, and you have your audiences. But as any marketer knows, the way to tell that story, you could have 20 different ways to tell it and say it and message it, right? This gives you a platform and a cadence on which to release this content, right, on a periodic basis. And it gives you a feedback mechanism. Like we talk to Meta every single week, right? Like literally on the phone, going through our ads, going through competitive ads, what's working, what's not. So we are informing the next brief, which is getting kicked off that week for the next release in 8 to 12 weeks. And so we're constantly getting the feedback loop. That's what it means to be always on, not just once a year, twice a year, but a program that gets you in market and gets you the ability to test these different messages and different ways of saying it over and over again. And what it does, it allows you to create, we talk about this internally, we call that like a best in breed ad. So for every client, we have a winning ad or ad combination, right? And we are constantly trying to beat that every time we go to market. So every 12 weeks, like here's the winner and it hasn't been dethroned, right? So let's do whatever we can to try to dethrone that winner, which means we're beating the cost per acquisition. We're lowering it again. And that's what we're striving to do. And at the end of the year, you can literally look at your progress and look and see and track the ads that have progressively had better click-through rate, better hook rate, and ultimately a lower cost per acquisition. And you can track those and plot those and see creatively, visually, how you've done that. And then that hopefully informs your next year's strategy to do the exact same thing.
It's machine learning, Darwinian environment.
It's machine learning. It means the creative teams have to be incredibly insightful and reimagining how to bring this brand to life over and over and over again, which I think is super cool and fun because there are so many ways to do it, and it allows you to test into ways that you never thought possible. Like, usually what happens is in the first half of the year, you're testing stuff that is so on brand. And then by the end, you're introducing content that is still on brand, but it may be stuff that they never thought they would do or could do. And this, the results are there. And they're like, holy cow, like this is an eye opener. We don't have to stay so true. We can start to, let's say, be a little more native with our content, right? We can actually fit into the platforms that we're on. And so our content, yes, it's still branded, but it feels very natural to the platform and the devices that we're using, whether it's, creator content or branded content. It feels like it's at home on these different platforms, and probably more importantly, at home in somebody's feed, right? Where they're not ignoring it. Because remember, a $3 million campaign from Coca-Cola, if it doesn't capture attention, it's going to get swiped inside of a half a second, and bye-bye to your $3 million. Whereas we're going to market with stuff at an eighth that price, less than that, and we're able to learn over and over again.
I think this is why so many Fortune 100s and Fortune 1000s are getting beat up by the DTC, direct-to-consumer brands right now. Not because the DTC model is any better, because virtually every brand is D2C, but they're younger. And they don't have that organizational muscle memory where they're just trying to say, hey, one big expensive campaign, blast it over and over again. Turning to this always-on world where there's such a high volume of content, where your creative people actually have to be sort of data-driven, and you have to smash those silos that exist in between those historical departments, that is hard as hell, right? So the younger brands, it's not that hard because they've been born and raised on it, and they know how to do it intrinsically and naturally. But what we've gotten really good at, I like to think, is helping some of these legacy brands, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, figure out how to look at the world through the lens of that audience who needs fresh content, and they need that content where they're living, and they're not living in a TV-based world, right? They watch TV, but they're not watching the 30-second spots.
That's right. Yeah, they're on their phone, they're on their computer, they're in between meetings, they're in between classes, whatever it is. That's where they're consuming the content. That's where their attention is. You ever watch your kids watch TV with you, right? As soon as the commercial comes on, what do?
Same thing as you and I would argue, which is straight to the mobile device, right? 16, 17, 19, 25 years old, hammering that thing. But you watch with a bunch of adults that are more or less the same at this point.
That's right.
Why would you? Why would you sit there watching 30-second spots when you have a supercomputer in your pocket? You've got Google, you've got ChatGPT, you've got all of the content in the known universe. You're just sitting there. Who wants to sit there watching some fancy jingle from some weird company, and to your point, which isn't even targeting you? Maybe if they're targeting you, you may look up, but the point of broadcast and OTT slightly better, but for the most part, you're not getting highly targeted.
Agreed. Yeah, CTV is better. It's unskippable. I still love CTV. I still love unskippable ads. They're still proven to work. But if you could pair that, right, with great content in feed that people don't want to skip, you've created brand champions. Isn't that the name of the podcast?
Well done. Well done. I should probably wrap it up at this point because you just landed on a high note, but we'll keep going because I think you're hitting on an important point, which is all of that stuff that sits at the sliver at the top of the funnel. What we're not saying is it doesn't work, right? The more money you spend on TV advertising, the more money you spend on CTV advertising, the more revenue you're going to make. Period. Spend more money on TV advertising. As a corporation, you will drive more revenue. What we're trying to solve is the efficiency equation. It doesn't mean it's the best way to spend your dollars, and it doesn't mean that's going to lead to profits. It's going to help on the top line. But if we start looking at the journey that people go through, and we understand what are the moments that matter, which to your point are very often first thing in the morning, all throughout the day, very much a social first world, very much not wanting the same message repeated over and over again, we can find those moments, and those moments are the ones that matter and just lead to a much stronger return on investment because the audience is willing and able and actually wants that content. And by the way, we've been talking a lot about social, but what also lives in this mid-funnel world and what also lives in this always-on world is your website, your email, your CRM. And so many companies are using that, again, for let's get some top-level branding and let's get some lower funnel conversions. But when you're using your own media, when you're using your website effectively, don't think of it as a website. Think of it as a content publishing tool where you've got just as much data as social media. You know who's coming to visit your site. You know a lot about their background. You know what the content is that they're looking for. Well, they're dangerously close to pulling out their wallet. Give them the content that they're looking for on your website. Developing your website or your email is a process, not an event. Just like social media, you're forever optimizing it, trying to understand exactly what people are looking for and delivering it to them.
Well said.
Help me out with this one, because I think we skirted over this. What is the definition of the mid-funnel?
To us, mid-funnel is all about consideration. And it mixes part of awareness, right? But really what it does is it takes that awareness and it translates directly into, should I put you in the consideration set? Why should I do it? How should I use your product, right? Where should I use it? And it gives people that reason. And it gives it to them over multiple touches at different points as they go through their journey, at these moments that they're reaching out or they're putting out signals to say, I want to learn more, I want to know more, or I want to be entertained more, right? By a particular brand or an interest, a hobby, whatever. That is what the mid-funnel is all about. And there are many brands that have realized that if I can put out the right content at the right moment, right, to the right person, I can get them from awareness and into consideration, right? And I can do it where your consideration levels are going to be higher than competitors that aren't doing it, because you're feeding that journey with that right content, right, at the right time. I think that's what's so critical about the mid-funnel. It's that ability to be there at those moments that TV just doesn't offer, out of home just doesn't offer. And they're great channels, but like, how do I pick up that baton and how do I move somebody and say, okay, like I'm way more than my TV spot. I'm way more than that one message that I've planted with you over and over and over again. Let me show you how much more there is to my brand and this product.
It sounds so grossly obvious, right? Like when you think about all the brands that you love, all the brands that you purchase from, all the brands that you tell your friends about, all the brands that have dominated since the history of time, it's always been mid-funnel, right? What do they stand for? What makes them different? What makes them better? How do they tell their story? The issue is, for almost an entire century, we didn't have a platform for mid-funnel. So some brands would be able to do it a little bit in their TV, and then they'd really do it in retail. And then they just built this muscle memory of saying, man, we're just going to slam you with some TV ads over and over and over again. We're going to use these fancy jingles and goofy characters, and maybe that's enough. And it would be enough. It's just not efficient. So the mid-funnel world is, how do you tell that immersive story now that that creative canvas is completely unlimited? The only limitation is our imagination, but we just have to break that muscle memory from years past of saying we're going to do it all through TV. And obviously brands are doing it. No brand right now is not on social. No brand right now isn't investing heavily in their website and their email and their CRM, but I don't think they're investing enough in meaningful content. I don't think they're spending enough in saying, what's our story and how do we optimize it?
That's right. They're repurposing their content. But I think what you just said is spot on.
And they might argue, no, we're not repurposing it, but they're repurposing the DNA, which is, hey, remember me? And hey, buy some. As opposed to everything that lives in between, which is like, why do I believe in you? And why should I tell my friends about you?
Right.
Hopefully we landed the plane. We've spent decades on this whole thing, and maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Much more importantly, please don't forget, we've been on this recording for a little while. It's going to take a couple months to nail it, right? We have to find the artist, First draft, second draft, third draft. You need to be happy. I need to be happy. Is it 10 seconds? Is it 30 seconds? Like, we're going to have to wrestle through a few topics here. So don't forget, somewhere around August, we need to start thinking about my holiday gift. We need a theme song, dude.
Fine. August. Yeah, let's put it off till August. I think it's a great idea.
That's what we'll do. On your birthday in August, we'll kick off the project. We'll get a theme song.
I feel like I'm stepping into the studio with Steely Dan. Do you remember like they used to make these studio artists redo, right, their bit, right, their guitar, whatever, over and over? Like, that's what I'm preparing myself for.
Yes, dude. Steely Dan, you're talking my love language.
I know.
I'm Donald Fagen. You're Walter Becker. We're sitting behind the board. We're driving people crazy. 8 different guitar players will come in, record a guitar solo. None of them will be good enough. You know I'm going to drive everybody crazy. I don't know if you've seen that documentary. It's incredible. That's us. That's enough for Brand Champions today. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Brand Champions is a QUESTUS production. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and review wherever you tune in. You can submit mailbag questions to brandchampions@questus.com.